Hi, I wanted to go through some data analysis steps using the Pandas library in Python. So I'm going to take you from the beginning all the way to visualizing data. We're going to use a whole host of different functions. So this is a good walkthrough for beginners. All the data sets in the Jupyter Notebook, I'll put a link to that in the description below. We're going to be looking at clinic data that's broken down and timestamp. So let's just get right into it. The first thing we're gonna do is load our essential libraries. So I'm just gonna document load libraries, and then we're gonna import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. This is our visualization library. We're gonna import pandas as PD, and this as is just giving us an alias that we can use instead of using this whole word. And then we're going to import another library called Numpy as NP. So we know that Matplotlib is going to give us our visuals. Pandas is a data manipulation library so that's going to allow us to read in the tables and everything. And NumPy allows us to do mathematical calculations. So these are the primary libraries that we're going to use. I don't think we're going to be using any other, but we'll see as we go along. All right, so let me open up another cell by just pressing the the plus button. And then what I want to do is in here is start to read in my data set. I'm going to call that df, and we're going to start using the alias that we have there to read a CSV that I have on my desktop. Now, let me see where that is. So that's in the desktop, and it's in the data folder. And then that is called hospital data.csv. And let's take a look at the head, which is the top of that data frame, which is it's called in pandas, but it's just two-dimensional, like a table is, which is columns and rows. So we'll be able to see that. And we're going to see a lot of different data frame functions that we're going to use. All right, and let's just make sure we're telling our end user what we're doing. So we're reading in the data. And then we are going to run this. You can press Alt Enter to run it, but it'll open up another cell, or you can just go up to the top and hit run. So here's our data. We have a date column, we have a medication column, we have lab costs, we have different types of revenue, and we're going to be looking at all this to come up with some essential answers to business questions that we're going to look at. All right, so now that we have our data frame read in, let's take a look at the data types to see what kind of transformations we may have to do. So I'm going to write in the alias here and use dtypes, which is going to give me all the different data types in here. And I'm going to run that. And then, wow, everything's an object. So we're definitely going to have to do some work to get things in the right data types. I think the first thing I would want to do is deal with the dates and the times and convert those into date time. So let's do that. All right, so we're going to use a pandas function called toDateTime to change these rows, to change these columns into the proper data type. So I'm going to say df, and the first column I'm going to deal with is just the date column. And I'm going to say equal. So what I'm doing is I'm going to resave this column once I transform it. So we know that I'm selecting the date column, and now I'm going to use a function called to can't date time. I can't remember if it's separated or together, but we'll find out in one section. And then I'm just going to run that function over my column, run that function over my column, and then let's see what happens. So now we were able to convert that. And if we go back and we type in dtypes, we should see that has changed the date column. And we can see it's a date time object now. But we have other date time objects here. We have the entry time, completion time, and the post consultation time. So let's quickly run the same function on those two columns. So I'm going to use the columns, df.columns, just to get the column names. And then if we look at the column names, I see an issue here. We have blanks in front of the columns. Now that's not necessarily a big problem, but sometime when you're writing these in, you might get spelling errors and it's going to cause issues. So what I'm going to do is fix this by going in and calling the columns. So I want to use that and I want to save it after I run this this function over it. I'm going to strip all the white space that exists in front of and behind that particular string. So we're going to do df.columns again. We're going to use a string method. So we're going to do str, and that gives us access to some string operations. And I'm going to use strip. And then I'm going to run that. But before I run that, I want to call the columns to see it again, just to see if it's cleaned the way we want it to. So I'm going to run that. And we have an error here, but it doesn't matter. Let's see why. Entry point. Oh, wow. Stupid spelling mistake. Sorry. Okay, now we're good. Sorry. That was an issue. All right. So now we don't have this error anymore. And we can see that it did what we wanted it to do. We got rid of the spaces. And then now we can go back down under our code and we can change the date times for the other columns. So I'm just going to copy this. And then I'm going to run it under here. Oops, wrong one. Select, copy. And then I just need to change the name to the times that we have. We have post consultation time. You go down here. Change this. And change this. All right, and we get one more, I believe. Entry time is another one. I'm just going to take entry time from here and change that over. Oops. Need to copy again. And get entry time. I guess I can type that in. Pretty easy. Entry time. Entry time. And I think it's capital T. Then we go back up and we got one more, I think we have here. We got entry time, post consultation time, completion time. It's the last one. So we can take our completion time Oh, keep forgetting to make one more of these. And completion time here. And let's change this to completion time. Okay. So we're all good there. Let's get rid of the extra quotations so we can make sure we are pulling the correct column. All right, and let's run that. And we have an error somewhere. Completion time. Yep, we have an extra, we're missing a quotation there. That looks right. Okay. Now we can see that we have our datetime objects here. Okay, so next, we know that these are all strings. So our lab cost, our medication cost, consultation revenue, all this should be as a float. So we need to actually change this, the data type, into a float. But I can already see some issues here. We have a $sign. We have commas that are all going to be seen as a string. So we need to clean that up. So I think the best way to handle that is to create a function to clean all those steps. And let's create a function. So we're going to use def to define the function. I'm going to call this clean text, I guess. And then I'm going to say this takes in a argument called x. You could put anything there, actually. It's just a placeholder. And then I'm going to use a quote, the colon to actually start the function. And then I'm going to put my steps in the function. So what do I want to do? The x, and x is going to represent each one of those rows. The first thing I want to do is I see this value here. I'm going to say I want to replace the $sign. So what do I want to replace the $sign with? And again, we want to save the x over so it saves all the steps that we have. So I'm going to say x, which represents our value, equals x dot replace. And what do I want to replace? I want to replace this string, and I'm just going to replace it with nothing. And then I'm going to next I am going to get rid of the commas, so I can actually just copy this, go down one step, and say, okay, I want to get rid of the commas, and what do I want to replace it with? Nothing. What else do we need to do? That looks okay. We have those two things we need to do. Here we have, if you look at this section here, we have a $sign and we have a dash. So we also want to get rid of the dash. I'm just going to copy that and go down a step and replace it. So let me align this correctly. So I want to copy this dash and replace it with nothing. The last step I want to do, we know that these are objects now. I want to be able to change this to a float. So we're going to use that Pandas alias to change the value to something numeric. So x equals the final step, x equals pd dot, and just like we did to datetime, we can do to numeric to change it into a float, numeric, and then we want to just change x. And the last thing we want to do is end out the function by saying return, oops, right. We want to say return x. Turn x. Okay, so that's our function. Let's apply it to one of our columns. So we can use the apply to apply that's a function to a specific column. So I'm going to choose a column. Let's use the medication revenue here. And let's get that. And let's go over and I keep forgetting the document, so we'll go back and do that. So we create a cleaning function. And then I'm going to save this again. Because remember, we're going to resave over the column. So we're just doing this. Let me get rid of some of these empty spaces. Doesn't really matter, but just to make the code cleaner. And then I'm going to hit dot apply. And then I'm going to apply my function here. And that function is called clean text. Clean text. And then let's take a look at the head to see if it worked. So let's run that. That looks good. Nope, there's an issue. Unable to parse the string at position 0. So that means we have some empty strings somewhere at position meta save. So we're running this on meta. Position 0, which would be this value. Okay, let's go down and see what's going on. We have medication revenue. Let's look at our function. We're getting rid of that. Position 0. We're running it on the right. df.apply.cleanText. So what's going on there? So there is a space somewhere here. Unless, well, let's try to say, okay, this is all empty. And let's run this and say if we have a space, eat it up. We could also use strip, but I'm going to try this. And that worked. So there was a space somewhere there. And all I did was tell it, okay, if there's a space there, get rid of it. And let's also check to see that it changed the data type to what we wanted. So let's see. Yeah, changed it to a float. So there we go. Now we just need to run this on the rest of our columns. So let's get rid of that and we'll just copy this and we'll just run it here. So let's run that on, I'm going to go and get consultation revenue because I don't want to type it in, it's too long. Run that on consultation revenue. Okay, consultation revenue. Let's copy the whole thing, go down, and let's also, what else do we have? Consultation revenue, lab cost. And this is why we clean those, This is why we clean those columns earlier, strip them of any open empty spaces or spaces that were trailing, because then we can copy and paste pretty cleanly. Um, all right, well, what do we have? We have lab costs, consultation costs, and looks like it. And then we'll just run the data types, D types. Oh, we're in business. Now, I think our data set is cleaned and we can start doing some analysis. So we do have multiple types of revenue coming in. It would be good to have a total revenue column. So let's create that. And before we do that, let's just document what we're doing. I'm just going to call it that. And then create a cleaning function. I think, and then here we are creating date time. Well, we're not really creating, we're changing, but you get the point. So now let's create a total revenue column. And all we're going to do is we're going to create a new column. We just make a new column by just creating a new string, and that to represent the column. And then we're going to pass that into the data frame using the bracket notation. And then we're just going to perform the operation, which is adding the columns together to create our new column. So we're going to call this total revenue. And our total revenue represents what? It represents DF dot medication revenue plus DF dot consultation revenue plus lab cost, I believe. Lab cost. All right, and let's run that and then also take a look at the head of our data. See if our new column. Nope, we had a spelling error somewhere. So it was in consultation revenue. I must have spelled that wrong. I am notorious for that. So let me fix that just by copying and pasting. Consultation revenue. Consultation revenue. Okay. So then we have a total revenue column. Oh, but we have an issue with lab cost. So we have these NaNs now. Oh, wow, we didn't. We have an NaN we need to deal with, and we should deal with that because when we start to look for totals, we may have problems. So we can handle that a few different ways. Oh, we can run the whole thing. I didn't even think about that. So here we go. df dot fill, we can call df equal df dot fill NA and 0. That makes it easy. All right. So let's look at our data frame head. Oh, and something broke. Oh, we need to run this now now we can run it. Now go all the way down. And boom, now we have fixed this problem. Yeah, so the fill in A is for the data frame. We're not running that on in each individual one, so it's easier to do that way. Let me just document that. And I believe we can almost start answering our business questions. We have a total revenue column. So let's fill NaNs. And we know it works, so let's just get rid of that. So what is our first question? What we want to know what time has the most visitors. So let's see. We have a date time. We have this entry time, and but we also know that this entry time is per day. So we might have to do some transformations with group by to pull that data into like a pivot. So first, let's go ahead and write a business question. What time has the most visitors? Visitors, okay, and then let's go back up here and go to heading and say okay and run that. What time has the most visitors? So the first thing we're going to do is we need to create a column with just the hour, and when we created those date time data types, we now have access to the different types of date time methods in that. So let's go ahead and get that. Um, so let's create a new column, entry hour, I guess we can call it. And let's just create that hour. And what do we want to do? We want to take the entry time, so the entry time, and now we have access to, and I didn't mention you can press the period after you do this bracket notation, and then if you hit tab, you can see all the different options you have here, and they're quite a lot. So I'm going to do DT. Oops, DT. So now I have DT, and I'm going to choose hour. I think it's small. I think it's not. Oops, sorry. I'm gonna press close. I think it's DT hour. And let's look at the data frame head to check. Uh, so entry hour, we're using entry time, which is here. It's date time. That should work. So now we have our entry hour. And now what we want to do is pivot or group by the hour and get all the different uh, visitors. Okay, so we can do this by just saying, I'm going to call this results. Let's call it, I'm going to call it pivot. Pivot 1, maybe? Pivot, doesn't matter what you call it. Pivot 1, so I'm going to say df.group by, and I want to group by what? I want to group by the entry hour. I don't think I can't remember if I need to put. Oh, I think I need to do it this way. Entry. What I'm trying to figure out is, do I need to specify the data frame again in the group by? But I'm not sure. So I'm just going to do it this way. Df dot entry hour, and after that we can specify how we want it aggregated. And what I actually want to count is this patient ID. So we could just count the patient ID, and by doing this patient ID and doing count, I think this should work. I can't remember. And now we can specify the aggregation that is counting that. And let's see what happens. Let's see that pivot dot head. This pivot. Oh, pivot 1. Yeah, that worked. Okay, so we can see the head, but actually we want to see all of those. So let's take head out. And now we have all the hours that we want to see. That's great. We can see which hour has the majority of the visits. And we can see from here, what is it? Looks like 9 o'clock. So when the clinic opens. But of course, it's better to see things visually. So let's start plotting things. Um, let's make sure we're documenting everything. So grouping by, oops, funny fingers, grouping by hour. All right, so we answered that first question. And if I'm just going to copy this, yeah, I don't think, and I'll show you that you can actually, if this might work, just go ahead and hit plot behind that, and we can get a plotted graph. Now that's okay, that looks fine, and we can definitely see when this actually occurred. We can see a big hit at 9 o'clock, but I kind of want to style this a little bit, so I'm going to use the alias that we used from above for Matplotlib, which was PLT, and I'm going to use the ggplot style. So I believe it's plt.style.use ggplot. So we can look at that ggplot. Maybe this is it. If you don't know, you can always Google it. So I might have to do that. So that is not found. So ggplot. Let's plt gg. I don't know why. That looks correct. plt.style.use ggplot. Why can't I use that? Style is not available. Available styles. GG. Oh, another mistake. Gosh, I'm making a lot today. ggplot. There we go. So now we can see when our first when we had the most customers to come into the clinic. Next question that we want to answer: does the total revenue correlate with the total visitors? All right, so let's get that as a mark. Heading. Okay. So this would be slightly more complicated to get. Of course, I can easily go here, copy this, and create another pivot to get the total revenue, right? And I'm going to call this pivot 2. And we're going to change this from patient ID to our actual total revenue. Total revenue. And then we're going to not count, we're going to sum. And then we can get a plot. And there is our total revenue. All right, so that is interesting, right? We do have, it doesn't exactly correlate, does it? We do see a spike in paid revenue at 9, but we do see a similar spike at 2 o'clock. But it would also be very nice to see these on one graph. And I'm going to walk you through how to do that right now. Okay, so let's get all this on the same axis. So we have two pivots here. But in order for us to visualize this, this needs to be on the same table. And we can easily do that. We can create a merge. So I'm just going to name this as merge. And then what I'm going to do is say, let's merge pivot 1. And we can use the merge function on that pivot, and that's the data frame. We can add it directly to the data frame. Merge, and then I want to merge pivot 2. So how are we going to merge these? Just like joins, I'm going to say on. Actually, we could probably just use the index, but I'm going to use the. Don't we have an ID in here somewhere? We have the patient ID. And so that exists in both tables or both data frames. Still a series. Okay. Let's just do this very quickly. Let's go df.groupby. What do we want to group by? We want to group by the entry hour. We'll just get one big column here. How do we df.groupby entry hour? And then we're just going to put sum. And then we're going to call this pivot 3. Then I'm going to do the same thing here. And I'm going to call this pivot 4. And then instead of this one, I want to have account. And then I'm going to merge both of these. Pivot 3 dot merge pivot 4 on entry hour. Okay. And then spell group by. Okay. Now I want to show you what this looks like because it's not pretty, but we just need a couple elements out of it. There is what we have. So we have the sums here on this side of the merge, and then we have the counts here. So now let's put this all in one graph. Let's just do merge.hid so we don't take up so much space. Okay, so let's put this, we need to use subplots for this. Fig and axis 1 equals subplot. So this is how we create subplots. We're going to use the figure and the axis, and we need to use plt.subplots in the function. And this is going to give us figure and one of the axis. And we also need to say that we want that axis shared. So ax1 equals ax2, axis 2. Oh no, ax2 equals ax1 dot twin. I think it's twin x. And now let's create both of these. And actually, I believe we can just say merge. Ooh, I forgot. Oh, sorry. ax1 dot plot. And then we want to plot. Yeah, we can just do dot plot. Now we need to actually say what we want to plot. So ax1, I'm going to say we want merge. For our x, we want merge dot index, because this is the entry hour here. This is our index. You can see that is separate from the other table. And then we want to say merge and total revenue And then I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to create another line and put, I can just put patient total revenue. And then let's make sure we got total revenue. We're using the right one. We need total revenue X, which is on that. And then we need our patient ID. Okay. And let's see what we get. Okay, so now we have that on one graph where we can see whether it correlates with this or not. We can also not just use lines. We can turn one of these, instead of using the dot plot, we can use dot bar. Oops. So I'm going to change one into a bar. And let's run that. And then let's change the color. So you can press Shift Tab and you can see all the different parameters in here. And we can actually press Control F and then go to color. And then we can see, okay, you can add color into this. Color equals red. Let me get rid of this. No, not red. We want blue. Let's say blue. Just double checking. I guess that is correct. So this is what we have for our dual axis. Because we have a spike here of 4,000. We have a very big spike here of 4,000 at the entry hour at about 9. Yep, it is. Okay, so now we want to answer the next business question. Like what percentage of revenue comes from different insurance types? All right, so we can definitely find this out by just going over and let's turn this into a heading. Now we can do the same kind of logic, doing a group by, group by. Group by, what do we want to group by? We want to group by our financial class, which is here, which has our different insurance types. Financial class. So I don't believe and then we want to do what? We want to do sum. And I don't believe we need to put this in brackets. No, we don't. So we have our different financial classes here, and we can definitely see what we have here. Now, I'm just going to get the total revenue out of that. Well, before we do that, let's visualize this. I'm going to do plt.py for a pie chart, and then I'm going to bring in our, let's save this as our pivot 5. And I'm going to say pivot 5 and then what do we want? We want a df dot index for this. Oh, pivot. Sorry, not df. Pivot dot index. Let's see what that gives us. Pivot 5 is not. Oh, yep, pivot 5. Okay, must be one dimensional. So, instead of doing it this way, we want the total revenue. Revenue. And we actually don't need this. Okay. And I can get rid of all that stuff by just putting the semicolon. Now, of course, we want to see the labels. So what are the labels? Labels equal. The only label that should be there. Index. All right, so now we have the, and then finally we want to put our auto, I think it's auto percentages, and then we need to give it a format. So we need to give it what comes before, and 1.1 format percentage. Now I had to actually look this up to have to know how to put the percentages there, and I found this on Stack Overflow. So I can run that, and then we have our percentage. That what percentage of revenue comes from insurance type. All right, so that is a walkthrough on how to clean data, how to visualize data, and how to put this all in one place. Of course, there's a lot of back and forth. We make mistakes, we clean them up, but that's Python. It's a very flexible language. I hope that added some value. Please leave some comments or anything you want in the section below. If you want to see a part 2 to this with forecasting or any types of other analysis using this data set, please let me know. Thank you.